Imagine a world where surrender was worse than death, where honor was more valuable than life itself. For the samurai of Japan, this wasn't just tradition, it was survival. Today we uncover why these warriors would rather die than give up, and how a rigid system shaped an entire culture of total commitment. 1. The code before the person. The samurai weren't simply skilled fighters. They were living, breathing embodiments of a strict moral code known as Bushido, which translates to the way of the warrior. But Bushido wasn't a set of polite suggestions or a philosophy to casually reflect upon. It functioned more like operating software installed at birth, shaping every thought, every action, and every choice throughout a samurai's life. From the moment a boy first picked up a wooden sword, he was trained to internalize a set of unbreakable principles. Loyalty always came before survival. A samurai's life was not his own. It belonged to his lord, his clan, and the ideals he represented. Protecting the honor of those he served was far more important than preserving his own body. Even fear could not justify hesitation. Equally, identity was not something derived from personal ambition or desires. It came entirely from service and obedience. Who you were was measured not by what you wanted, but by how faithfully you performed your duties, how courageously you faced danger, and how consistently you upheld the code. In such a world, hesitation was deadly. To surrender was not merely to lose a battle, it was to erase yourself from history. It was to bring dishonor upon your family, your clan, and your entire legacy. For a samurai, every choice, every strike of the sword, every breath in battle was tied to a single purpose: total, unwavering commitment to the system that defined life itself. Anything less was unthinkable. 2. Why surrender was more dangerous than defeat. In war, defeat is often temporary. Armies can regroup, battles can be lost, and yet life moves forward. But for a samurai, defeat in the form of surrender carried consequences far more severe than the loss of a fight. It carried permanent dishonor. To be captured was not just a personal failure, it was a social and historical death sentence. A samurai's identity, and the honor of his entire clan, could be destroyed in a single moment of submission. Picture this: a warrior, once feared and respected, dragged through the streets as a living warning. Crowds jeer, enemies point, and your very presence becomes a symbol of weakness. Every observer is reminded that one man has failed, and through him, the reputation of his family and clan is tarnished. Generations could feel the stain of your surrender, and history would write your name not as a brave fighter who faced impossible odds, but as a cautionary tale, a man who chose survival over honor. This was why surrender was never an option. It wasn't cowardice that drove samurai to fight to the death. It was the annihilation of legacy that awaited those who gave in. The system they lived under didn't glorify heroism for its own sake. It rewarded total, unflinching commitment because it worked. A society built around honor and reputation needed warriors who would act without hesitation, even when facing certain death. The result was a culture where warriors were trained to see life and death not as opposites, but as measures of loyalty. Death became preferable to dishonor because it preserved the narrative that mattered most. Unwavering dedication. In this way, surrender wasn't just the end of a battle. It was the erasure of a life's meaning, a risk no samurai could afford to take. 3. Ritualized death. When a samurai faced inevitable defeat, there was a choice few outsiders could truly understand: seppuku, or ritual suicide. This was not an act of desperation or fear. It was a deliberate, disciplined decision designed to preserve honor above all else. In a culture where dishonor could erase a person from history, seppuku offered a way to reclaim agency in the face of powerlessness. Through this ritual, a samurai could take control of his own story. Rather than letting enemies dictate his fate, he could decide how his life and his death would be remembered. In doing so, he transformed a moment of potential humiliation into an assertion of courage and self-respect. Seppuku also shielded family and clan from disgrace. In a society where one warrior's failure could tarnish generations, this act protected those left behind. By choosing death on his own terms, the samurai prevented enemies from turning his capture into a public spectacle. sparing loved ones from shame and retaliation. Most importantly, seppuku was a way to uphold the values that define the samurai's identity. Loyalty, courage, discipline, and honor were not abstract ideals. They were lived daily, and this final act embodied all of them. Death became a statement, not a surrender. It was a refusal to be reduced to a cautionary tale, a refusal to let failure define him. The ritual itself was precise and symbolic. Every step, every gesture, reinforced the seriousness of the act and the unwavering commitment to the code. In the samurai worldview, seppuku was not the end of life. It was the ultimate affirmation of the principles that guided it. By embracing death with dignity, a samurai ensured that his legacy remained untarnished, his honor intact, and his story one of integrity rather than shame. 4. A system with no exit. The samurai system shared a trait common to all rigid hierarchies. It left no room for disengagement. A warrior could not quit, could not change his path, and could not fail safely. In this world, value was absolute, either honorable or erased. Dishonor wasn't just personal, it reflected on the entire clan, staining family and allies alike. This made surrender unthinkable. Hesitation or retreat was more than a mistake. It was a threat to the social and political fabric that bound the samurai to his lord and community. Every sword stroke, every strategic choice, and every act of courage was measured not only against the enemy, but against the unforgiving expectations of the system itself. Survival alone could never redeem a dishonorable act. 5. The weight of honor. Honor wasn't a vague ideal for the samurai. It was currency. Losing it could strip you of everything: your status, your family's reputation, your very legacy. This created an extreme form of discipline. Samurai weren't motivated by fear of death. They were motivated by fear of erasure. Their lives were short, yes, but they were lived intensely, with purpose and clarity that most modern societies struggle to understand. In a world without surrender, there was no halfway point. Every decision was either fully committed or dishonorable. This binary thinking seems extreme now, but for centuries it produced warriors capable of feats that define Japanese history. 6. Why the system was unsustainable. But no system, no matter how disciplined, is invincible. The samurai culture didn't collapse overnight. It faded slowly as the world changed. Technology evolved. Guns replaced swords, making traditional combat skills less relevant. Governments centralized. Shifting loyalty from local lords to national law diluted the power of clans. Economics shifted. Samurai were warriors, but the economy rewarded administration, trade, and governance over battlefield prowess. The system didn't fall because it was weak. It fell because it was too rigid to adapt. Warriors who had trained for honor above all else found themselves in a world that measured value differently. 7. Lessons from the samurai. The story of the samurai isn't just history. It's a lesson in systems, loyalty, and human behavior. Extreme commitment can create greatness, but it can also be a trap. Systems that don't allow exit points may produce efficiency, but they also fail under change. Honor and identity can be powerful motivators, but if rigidly enforced, they can demand the ultimate price. The samurai remind us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the ability to act when every option is extreme. They also remind us that cultures, like individuals, must adapt or risk irrelevance. Conclusion. The samurai chose death over surrender, not because it was easy, but because their entire identity in the world they served left no other option. It was a system of honor, fear, and unyielding loyalty, a system that defined warriors for centuries and still fascinates us today.